Welcome to episode 2 of Love Letters. This one is dedicated to Fuzz. Fuzz pedals have been with us for 60 years and they were the first guitar pedals to be made ever. And the first guitar pedal was the Maestro Fuzz, which I don't have here unfortunately, but here you can see a lovely ad from back in the day. But what I do have is a original 1960s fuzz face. Germanium fuzz face, so this is probably around 67, 68, 1968, with NK2-275 germanium transistors. And later on they switched to silicon transistors around 1969, 1970 I believe. If I'm not correct, please correct me in the comments. And this is an original 69, 1970 fuzz face with silicon transistors. And they switched to those transistors because the germanium transistors are really sensitive to heat. And yeah, when it's above 25 degrees Celsius, they sound different. And then once the temperature increases, there is no more tone left. Last week it was pretty hot here in the Netherlands, so I was a bit worried I couldn't shoot today, but 21 degrees Celsius today, which is perfect for shooting with fuzzes. So yeah, original vintage fuzz face. This is really, really cool. Joe from Isle of Tone sent me a couple of pedals to use for this video, which I'm very grateful for. The Tone Bender is another one. This is a Tone Bender Mark I prototype made by Isle of Tone. So this is a replica. It looks absolutely fantastic. And the Tone Bender is a variation on the fuzz face. It uses 3 transistors instead of 2, adds an extra gain stage, and has much more gain and sustain, and doesn't clean up as a fuzz face does. Sounds really, really good. We'll hear it in a bit. And this one is from the Far East, a Univox Super Fuzz, which is an entirely different pedal, and not to be confused with the Marshall Super Fuzz, which was basically a tone bender in a different enclosure. So Fuzz, it's my all-time favorite. I've been playing with fuzz pedals exclusively for about 15 years, and this one has been on my board all the time. The MJM Guitar Effects London Fuzz 2, which is silicon fuzz face. And I just use the volume pot of my guitar to go from clean to fuzz and everything in between. And it's only in recent years that I started using overdrive pedals. But fuzz is still very well represented in my rig, and I have a lot of fuzz pedals. Let me show you a few favorites of mine. This is the J. Everman Fuzz Drive G2, which is a silicon fuzz face style type pedal, but it lets you dial in the amount of fuzz. So you can make it sound like a clean boost or an overdrive or a full-on fuzz face. Really, really cool pedal. They aren't made anymore. Sometimes they pop up in reverb. When they do, get one because they are really cool. The Shotmaker Instruments Heroin Fuzz Boost type pedal. Not really a fuzz face, but it gets really fuzzy with this one. The Beatronics Vespa is a recent one. It's an op-amp based fuzz, so it doesn't have germanium or silicon transistors. And this one is a really aggressive and gated fuzz and octave in one. And the cool thing is that when you press and hold this switch, it switches to the octave, and release, it goes back to the fuzz. So you can do some really cool stuff with it. Then the Thorpe Effects Field Marshal, which was based on the Love Tone Big Cheese, if I'm correct. Gated tones, really aggressive, but also cleans up really nicely. The Kingtone Octaland, which some people say it isn't really a fuzz pedal because it's an octave fuzz type pedal. And this one does all the cool classic tones from a Roger Mayer Octavio, Tycho Brahe Octavia, the Cobb, which Doyle Bramwell uses, and JHS does a fantastic line of fuzz pedals, the Legends of Fuzz series, in these cool wedge style enclosures, based on really classic designs. There's a big muff type pedal. I don't have a big muff for today, sorry. Fuzz face, tone bender, and a super fuzz, I think. Really cool pedals, check them out. And then there is of course Mythos pedals with the golden fleece and the high road fuzz. Really compact, mini, I don't have a mini enclosure, but really mini enclosure with one knob, really cool. And one of my recent favorites is the Espresso Effects Silicon Fuzz and Germanium Fuzz. And these are built by SAF in the UK. And SAF makes them with new old stock parts, all hand-built, hand-matched transistors, and you can choose your transistors, and he'll help you select the transistors if you don't know which one to choose. And they're pretty affordable. So if you want something that's really authentic and doesn't break the bank, go check out Espresso Effects in the UK. But there are a lot of guys out there that really know their fuzzes and know what makes them tick. And Yeah, they just know what parts to put in there. There is Zollinger in the US, there is Ivor Fuzz if you want to spend a little more money, Dominion Fuzz in Canada, really cool stuff too. And if you're really serious about fuzz, check out Isle of Tone. And this is their Haze 69 fuzz, and this is the, here we go, Haze 67 in a super cool tweed enclosure. Both pedals are prototypes which Joe kindly sent me to use for this video. This is the very first 69 fuzz ever made, and this is the tweed Haze 67 prototype, the first one they made. This one has new old stock Mullard OC81D transistors, and this one, let me check, Mullard silicon transistors, new old stock from the 60s. This is the first one I plugged in and I was blown away. These are really, really, really good pedals. And yeah, they are also really expensive. And if that is worth it, that's up to you. I think it's worth it. It's also a pretty good investment if you want to look at it from a business point of view, which a lot of people tend to do these days. They won't go down in value once you get one. So I started thinking about this episode right after I did the first episode of Love Letters, which was Pedal Evolution. And that one sort of grew impulsively to the first episode of Love Letters, and I created that one within a week, and I wanted to spread the workload a bit for the second episode. So I started thinking about people to interview really early on, and I spoke to Joe early in the process, Joe from Isle of Tone, and he was like, okay, tell me what you need. And we started talking, and then the project grew and grew, and there wasn't enough time, so the workload wasn't spread, but it became bigger and bigger. And well, yeah, now I'm here 2 days before I'm gonna post it. So there's still a lot of work to do in the edit. And what I basically wanted to explore was why are fuzz pedals still so attractive to guitar players, and why are we still messing with the same circuits 60 years later. So I spoke to some people and asked their opinion about it.
Hi.
Hey, man.
Perfect. Oh God, what just happened?
How you doing, Sasha? You alright, pal?
Hey, man.
Hey, man.
All right, we're rolling. Yeah.
My laptop has the camera on the bottom of the screen right there, so you're always like,
Hey, how are you?
hey, man.
And especially for you, I put on my trousers.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little something about your relationship with fuzz?
Yeah, my relationship with fuzz. My first fuzz pedal would have been a Proco Rat, I guess. You know, that's arguable. But when I first started playing with the sound of what we would call fuzz, a square-waved clipped signal, it was from a Rat pedal.
Yeah, well, so my relationship with fuzz actually started pretty late in life for me. I've always been a massive fan of people who used fuzz, but I was never the gear nerd in my younger days as a guitar player. I was really obsessed with, you know, people like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jeff Beck and Hendrix, of course, and for me it was like, I didn't realize until I was in my mid-20s that Stevie Ray was changing his pickups all the time. You know, so when I was learning his licks and just being like, it doesn't sound right, it's because I was on the neck pickup the entire time. So I really wasn't into the gear thing until until I was probably about 24 or 25 and really started to get into it and realizing like, oh, some of these sounds that I'm hearing are some pretty cool like vintage fuzz pedals. And the first one that caught my ear was I bought my dad had a band, and his guitar player, who's still one of my heroes, his name is Damon Mitchell, and he plays in a band called the New Meanies. Anyways, Damon was in my dad's band, and he had a Voodoo Lab Sparkle Drive, and he was like, "This is the only overdrive pedal you need, kid. Go get one." So I went and I bought one. I saved up my money and I bought one. And in the box with the Sparkle Drive came a CD. And the CD had little samples of all of their pedals being used. And the one that freaked me out was the Proctavia, which was their version of the Octavia. And the guitar player was Blue Saraceno. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a total monster. This huge wide vibrato. It just was like, what is this crazy shit? So I saved up some more money. I ordered a Proctavia. I plugged into it and was like, this thing is broken. It sounds horrible.
I managed a small guitar shop in northwest Alabama, and the guy walked in. It was I think it was an 80. I still have it. I think it was an 87 Rat, vintage Rat. Bought it for $15 from the guy, and that pedal. I think that pedal is why I got into collecting pedal, like being more curious with pedals. I'd had some stuff, but something about that old Rat guy only wanted $15. They weren't cool. Nobody cared. I remember like no one talked about a Rat, and I didn't know it, but I later learned around the same time Johnny Buckland was using Rats on the first Coldplay records. I didn't know that, but I love those records. So like maybe the Rat was coming back there, but that was my first time with a Fuzz. I remember getting a Fuzz face and not liking it a lot. I think it's because I put it in my chain with my overdrives, didn't know to put, like there's just no education on how to use Fuzz.
Do you know what, mate? When I was first playing and I was like doing a lot of gigs, cover band stuff, I used to not really like Fuzz at all. And I think that was more of a user issue. That was me. I had some good Fuzzes and I let them go because I don't think I understood how to use them correctly. I was going into a clean amp, everything on 10, even my guitar part, everything on 10, everything maxed, going like that. Sounded like a box of angry bees. And I was like, this pedal's crap. Not realizing it was me. It was the user, it was me. I was the one who was not using it correctly. So I started talking to a friend back a few years ago, and he sent me a pedal to try, and I started experimenting a bit more with the volume on my guitar part. And as soon as I realized that your Fuzz is there, and obviously a loud amp, it was a game changer for me. A lot of good Fuzzes, Dustin, the Ivor, that's a fantastic, that was a really fantastic Fuzz. Which led me into the Zonks, and then it's been like a rabbit hole since, trying to chase that tone.
Does it's always changing. I mean, because you're always on the quest for to make it better somehow, but dramatically, no, it hasn't changed dramatically. It's minuscule. Probably nobody hears it but me,
For me, it doesn't work just to put it into my normal signal chain and not to change anything, the amp settings or the other pedals and the guitar. So normally if I set up a Fuzz pedal and I want to get the best results, I go to the amplifier, I turn down the volume to 0, dial in treble, mids to about 6 to 8, bass at 3, roll back the guitar's volume to 5, and most of the bridge pickup. And then I turn on the volume on the amplifier and try to get my clean sound. And if I want to play solos or if I want to have more gain, I just dial in more volume of the guitar. So I set up my amplifier around the Fuzz pedal.
Yeah, it's difficult to beat. That's why I just, the way they're so interactive. And this is what's amazing about Fuzz. And I think a lot of younger people don't understand is that it's all about your volume control on your guitar, There's so many different tones within a Fuzz pedal, just within your volume control.
So it's something that you have to tame. It's not really something that is there. You just go and play. You have to really make it work. That's why a lot of players, like young players that they play Fuzz pedals for the first time, they always think, oh man, is this broken? Or like, oh man, I don't enjoy it that much. But because it's something that takes time for you to understand. But once you understand, it's really nice.
I pretty much immediately took it off my pedal board and ran in the opposite direction. And I think, my pedal board had a tuner and a sparkle drive and maybe a wah-wah pedal. And then it wasn't until later that I really started to kind of jones after that sound again. And that's when, I can't remember who it was now, but somebody said, oh yeah, you got to put that into like a tube screamer or something. And then I experimented with that, and then all of a sudden it all made sense.
Unlike so many other circuits, it's so connected to you and your instrument, just like an amp is, because it's so dynamic and responsive. And I think that's what keeps bringing the majority of us to that, because there's an immediate connection between your hands and the guitar and the pedal and your amp and all the controls on it that just lets you come out.
As the years go by, I would get more and more vintage fuzzes and play them, and started to realize that my love for fuzz started really when I learned that you have to play to it and not necessarily through it. It's like fuzz is, you can't just play the same guitar parts and expect it to work. You have to wrestle with it and like let it be an instrument as well as your guitar.
If you say some old recordings you hear and said, oh man, I don't know if it's really a good tone, but it is a good tone. Because you listen to that so many times that it becomes something that I don't know, like it becomes classic.
What I've really learned over the years with fuzz, and it almost doesn't matter what circuit it is. You have to change how you touch the guitar. You can't just play it the way you would, sort of that dirty clean blues sound where you dig in really hard with your right hand. You kind of have to finesse it a lot. So I really started to learn the dynamics of how, through an Octavia style circuit, how it changed the way you play. And I think that had a really big influence on how I played just regular guitar too. So that's kind of the journey in a nutshell. And then I was making my first solo record after the Brothers Landreth, which had been decidedly pretty singer-songwriter driven. And after that record, we started touring that record, and we came over to Europe, and I met Lee Anderton and Dan and Mick from Pedal Show and Danish Pete and all those guys. I started to really lean into the guitar player side of things. And so when we were going to take a break from the Bros and I was going to do a solo record, I was like, I really want this to be a guitar album. I really want to make a guitar album, which of course Whiskey was not. Like in hindsight, when I listened to that record, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but when I listened to that record versus like real guitar music, like it's pretty light. I've always been a pedal board guy, but it was kind of very much searching around in the dark for sounds. I didn't really know much about, all the different overdrive circuits, for example, like the difference between a tube screamer and a blues breaker. I didn't know. I didn't really experiment with pedal order until kind of that record, until Whiskey. And I really started hanging out with Dan and Mick, and sort of Dan gave me a list of like, here are some pedals that you need. You need to get your hands on a King of Tone. You need to get your hands on some sort of fuzz face.
Yeah, 60 years of basically the same circuit. This question is dangerously philosophical, I guess. Why I was thinking the other day, everything evolves. Fuzz just seems to stand still. I guess at its heart, I have a Stratocaster right here. It's 1950s. Guitar is really that simple, and technology and things can keep evolving or getting like more technological, but guitar really is just an analog. It is literally an analog, and it's a magnet wrapped with wire, creating an electromagnetic coil, moving through a cable made of metal and rubber into an amp using basically valve light bulbs into a speaker. You know, it is an analog, and you can digitize it, and I love, you know, I have Line 6 amp sims and a Kemper over here. Those are great, but at the heart of guitar, it is an analog.
Do you know what? I think it's the simplicity of it. I think, and I also think maybe there is a touch of snobbery. I think the guitar world carries like a massive air of snobbery. I mean, I've been caught in it myself, you know, like flashing badges, you know, look at this pedal, you know, and, you know, we all get sucked into it at some point. But I think the old stuff just sounds better. It does. There's not much new stuff that comes along that, you know, and I mean, it's all very subjective, of course, mate. Well, you know, what I might like, the next person might not like, etc., etc. But in my personal experience, I've had whole old stuff that cost way too much, and I've sold it, and I thought I'm going to thin this out and go to more digital stuff or cheaper stuff. And I think as soon as you've tasted the older circuitry and the old magic, it's really difficult not to keep going back to it.
I think that there's like, that's the charm, is that you kind of have to jump through, like, they're high maintenance. You have to jump through all the hoops in order to make it work. And if you're trying to cut those corners somehow, I feel like, and this is not me being a purist, I just think you're missing the point. You know, if you're trying to make a fuzz face quiet, or you're trying to make it, I mean, I do think the Chris Benson temperature thing is awesome. I love that. It's, you know, because I've been on stage and you go to step on your fuzz face, you know, you're playing a summer festival, and, you know, you're not the headliner, so you get the fucking sun coming, the, you know, 2 o'clock sun coming on your pedal board, and it's like, go to step on your fuzz pedal and it just goes, you know. I've had that happen. It's a drag. It's why I almost always have a silicone fuzz in my gig bag for those hot days to swap in. This one, actually, this is one of the first fuzzes.
Oh, just gave you one.
Yeah. So he sent me the germanium one first, and then I called him and was like, "Oh man, do you have any creative solutions for how to get it not to poop out on a hot day?" And he's like, "Yeah. I'll send you a silicone one." And then that's so.
A lot of new guitars or custom shop guitars or whatever that have been made recently, they probably better than some vintage guitars. But I don't have the mojo, or they don't have that thing that we heard when we were growing up as players. So the reason that I like vintage tones and vintage gear is not necessarily because they are better, but it's just because that's what got used to listen when I was growing up.
You know, transformers, I don't know, you know, transformers and amps, I don't think are better. In fact, I think it's just the opposite. I think that because of the restrictions put on using lead solder, I think that we've gone backwards as far as transformers. Old transformers sound better, in my opinion.
We keep using those circuits because it's the same reason I keep playing a Telecaster. And it's, like I said, we could talk about this for 3 hours. It's philosophical. It's like, why do I not want a brand new flashy guitar that's like has no headstock and has electronic pickup? I don't want that. I want a Telecaster. I want a Jazzmaster. And I think Fuzz is in the same category. There is something about that analog in a digital world, you know. We're on Zoom, I'm on my phone, there's digital stuff everywhere, and there's something about coming back to an analog. It's the same reason it feels good to take a pencil and write on a notepad. Ride your bike. Pick up your dog's poop in the yard, whatever. Like, it's an analog.
So we work just with new old stock parts, with all kind of sort of the transistors, some Holy Grail transistors. I buy most of them from a friend of mine. He's a collector. And I have the opportunity to buy them. We are selected values I need for the gain level, the HFE level. But the problem is, even if you select the pair which should fit or shall work, that's not a guarantee that they really sound great. So my partner, Steve, who is the engineer behind the Isle of Tone, he developed and built a kind of pedal where we can plug in several pairs of already matched transistors and compare amongst each other as long as I find a pair that has a great cleanup, breakup. We try them between 15 degrees and 25 degrees because germanium transistors are a little bit sensitive. So we put them into the cellar, into the bottles of wine. And we heat them up. The only thing which works pretty okay with me are my ears. So eyes are not good anymore. The taste is a little bit strange, but my ears work pretty okay. So I select everything by ear.
I mean, I think if you think about the simplicity of a circuit, like changing a few small parts on a big muff might not make as big of a difference as it would on like a fuzz face or a tone bender or something. So, I mean, when you have these simple circuits, they're so sensitive to the voltage when you're setting the bias, or the gain of the transistors can be huge. I mean, they can take it from sounding just absolutely perfect to just squealing uncontrollably as soon as you turn it on. So they're just so sensitive to everything. When you're messing with stuff that's so high gain and so few parts count, it's just like, you know, the recipe for making a good guitar. It all has to be right for that one sound, and I think it's the reason they're so sensitive is just because of the simplicity of them all.
I feel like there's a certain amount of resolve that you just have to kind of, you know, they're noisy, they're temperamental, they don't like buffers, they have a preference to which pickup you use. You know, they're really sensitive to the capacitance of your cable and the you know, the controls on your guitar. You know, all or I guess the resistance. I don't know anything about that shit, but they're really sensitive to the whole thing. They're, you know, and I teach a little bit, do like Skype lessons and stuff, and people go, yeah, so I went out and bought your fuzz pedal, and I can't get it to sound good. It's like, yeah, you have to change the way you play. You know, kind of I mentioned that earlier. I don't have one of my own fuzz pedals right now, because what ends up happening is I always have one on my pedal board, and then I have like 20 or 30 for the merch table. But then eventually we sell through all the pedals, and somebody's like, don't you have one more? I'm like, well, I do, but it's my personal one. And, you know, sometimes people are like, well, I'll give you another $100 for it. I'm like, well, shit. Okay. And, you know, the thing for me is it's not even really a money thing. It's just when somebody's like, I really want one. And it's always like, I'm always in Europe when it happens. You know, it's like very rare that somebody's in Winnipeg just like, hey, can I buy one of your pedals? But it's like, oh man, I drove here from Slovenia and I really wanted to get one of your pedals and you have none left. I'm like, well, I have one left. But it's got Velcro on it, you see. And so that's you know, I'm letting my secrets out. I'm a total bleeding heart sucker. So if you play my heartstrings, I'll sell you my fuzz pedal.
What is your favorite fuzz pedal and why?
It's my 1973 Tonebender Mark III. It was made in September on the 13th day.
You know what? This one. Yeah, that's the one.
At the moment, my favorite circuit is the Tonebender MK1 circuit, because it just has two knobs. And I'm an easy man, so most of my amps all just have two knobs, volume and tone.
It's not at all what I'm most known for, but this is probably, of all my pedals, this is my prized possession. I bought this when I was I'd finally figured out my Proctavia. I was like, oh, this is how this thing works. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go and find a Tycho Brahe. I really want to, or however you say that. So it was like, I got to get one of these. I could not find a real one, at least not one that I could afford, because at that point they were $1,500, and that was probably 15 years ago, or 10 years ago at least. And so this is the Chicago Iron one. But even then, 10, 15 years ago, this was $500. So... And I think it was from one of the original runs. Anyway, I love this thing. It means a lot to me, because it was kind of like, this was when I got this. This was when I graduated from, you know, a production line pedal to like something made by hand and looks like the real thing. And it's like, I feel like when this is on my pedal board, I feel like Mike Landau. I feel like I'm Mike Landau.
Honestly, I love, and it's self-serving, but I love the Golden Fleece, because to me, it marries like the fuzz face thing, but it's not as, when you roll back, it doesn't get as bright, and it's not as gainy. But I like those things. I like, you know, stuff like the Golden Fleece. I like more classic circuits. Probably the Tonebender. Fuzz face is never. I like them for like 15 minutes, and then I get bored with them. I want something with more control, and maybe I've just not played enough of them. I mean, I've played a bunch of old ones, and they're, you know, truly hit or miss. I've played some old ones that were just perfect, and played some that were you just want to throw them away. But there's always like this point where on the gain knob, if you turn it too high, it's just hissing and sounds bad. And if you turn it down a little bit, all the sizzle goes away and it sounds like mud. So I mean, there's this, every now and again I'll get one that I kind of like, and there are a few I like, but I just prefer the Tonebender, like 3 transistor thing.
At Macari's Musical Instrument Exchange in Soho, London. Yep, that's a story to me. When I hold this, you know, I've gotten to know Aunt Macari. I've heard the stories. I don't know who made this. Their name's not in it, but man, this is like time travel. This is time travel to me. I was born in 82, but I'm right now in 1973. And that's cool to me. I mean, that's why I love these pedals.
I don't think I have a favorite. I mean, the Isle of Tone stuff is so good. Basically, those pedals sound like the greatest fuzz face I've ever heard. I prefer them to my original fuzz face. I mean, they're just phenomenal. You know, like I said, that I think the King Tone fuzz is really good. I think the Pedal Pawn fuzz is fantastic too. Those are like my current favorites.
It's not the basic idea behind was never to make a big business. The basic idea is to support people and to work with great artists and to work with artists I like, and to connect people, to increase a network and to connect people with people and just make some music.
I would say it's the ones from Joe, Isle of Tone. I would say the 67, the Haze 67. He sent me the Lux 66, which is awesome too. And I've been playing some gigs that are, when I'm playing not my own gig, I just go jam with some friends or it's like a different kind of stuff. I bring one pedal or just the amp and the guitar, right? Sometimes I'm all lazy too, but when I have to bring only one pedal, it's usually fuzz pedal. So one of the last gigs I played only with the Lux 66. It was awesome too. But the 67 is more nasty. It has more, yeah. But I would say they're my favorites. But I really like the one. I don't have any vintage fuzz pedals. I don't have them. But all the pedals that I have and that I like, they are based on vintage ones. Or even the Isle of Tone, he used like vintage components and everything.
Yeah.
But I really like also the pedal pawn, pedal pawn. I like the one a lot, especially for single coils. I think it's really glassy when you roll down the volume knob. Yeah, I have so many, man, and it's hard to pick a favorite. But if I have to pick a favorite, it would be the Haze 67, which it doesn't clean up as a fuzz face, but also clean ups beautifully.
Cleanup of a fuzz pedal is what happens when you roll down your guitar volume and you get a fantastic clean tone. The fuzz pedals we talked about and the fuzz pedals you heard in the first jam all clean up in very different ways. Even a fuzz face with different transistors sounds different when it's cleaning up. So what I want to do now is hook up a couple of fuzz pedals and just roll back the volume on the guitar so you can hear what happens when the fuzz starts cleaning up. So fuzz pedals are really particular about what they like with them in the chain, where their position is in the chain, and yeah, like we talked about earlier, the germanium ones are really sensitive to temperature. And another cool thing with this one, the MJM one, when I close my guitar volume completely, it picks up some Russian AM radio station, which is really cool. They sound really cool with other effects that come after the fuzz in the chain, and I run them into overdrive pedals a lot of the time just to get a bit of extra grit and not make the fuzz work too hard, because when you crank the gain on a fuzz it can get noisy and hissy, and when you run it into an overdrive pedal you can roll back on the fuzz knob a bit, which makes them sound better. You know, the first time I plugged in the fuzz pedal I was like, okay, let's open up the fuzz to get that Hendrix tone, but what I had to learn was that Hendrix used a Marshall stake which was cranked, so the fuzz didn't have to work really hard.
I get messages, so what's your best pedal, and what's the most expensive one, and what's the most Jimi Hendrix sounding like pedal you have? I mean, it's crazy, because you can buy the best gear if you're not able to handle it, and if you don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to spend a lot of money.
I'm playing louder and louder every day, so now naturally the amp is breaking up a little bit, and I love it. I think it's cool. It just makes me play different. When I have it's cleaner. I pick a little bit stronger, because then when you pick stronger you kind of have a little bit of breakup. But if it's a lot breaking up more, maybe I pick a little bit less. But also my picking, it's related to how my emotional state at that moment. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're a little angry or you are anxious, and then that made you attack the strings differently. But yeah, I think that's actually the cool thing, the fact that all the time it's a bit different. Because if it was all the time the same, yeah, I don't know.
A golden duo is together with a univibe pedal, and I have one right here. This is my pride and joy univibe pedal, the Argenciano Gypsy Vibe, which is made by Franco Argenciano in Poland. Not really a Polish name because he's Italian, but he lives in Poland. Which is a replica of the original Chine univibe pedal from the 60s. And it sounds like this with a fuzz.
So I have my sort of my prize pedal or fuzz collection in front of me. I've got this. This is it's got NKT 275s in it.
I was just talking to the guitar player from the Psychedelic Furs, who I just produced their last album, and we used quite a bit of different fuzz tones on that album. One of my favorites that we used a lot on that is, the Schumann PLL is an amazing pedal. It's just very special. And also the old Prescription Electronics Experience pedals.
I got this guy. This belongs to a friend of mine, Ed, in Wales. And he lent this to me, I think, in 2018, and I might bring it back to him this year when we get to, or next year when we get to Europe. Of course, I have this guy and the Jesse Davey. This is really cool. Are you familiar with this dude? Trufi. And this is like the color driver. So it's like the David Gilmour, whatever the color tone fuzz or whatever the heck it was called. But this has got a master volume on it, because the Gilmour one is like insanely loud. And then I bought this.
Doyle.
And it sounds awful. There's just something about the way that Doyle makes it. This is one of those things I bought. It was like Doyle has one, and so I'm gonna buy one because he has one. And when he plays it, it sounds amazing. And I plugged it in, and was just like, I cannot make this thing sound good.
I think the Zonk, the attraction for me with the Zonk is almost the uncertainty of what's going to happen with it, in terms of like, if you've got a distortion or a clean amp signal, you're always gonna get like a complete signal coming through. Whereas something that's gated and something that is not almost natural sounding leaves a bit more anticipation, if that makes sense, to what's going to come out. So you never quite know, and you can kind of hide in that, because I'm a scrappy player. I hold my hands up. I'm a scrappy player. So in amongst the uncertainty of the Zonk, you can kind of hide a bit of scrappiness. Out of it, mate. Like all fuzzes, as you know, you have to smash the amp. The amp has to be loud. I can't use my Zonk without an attenuator. I've tried everything. I've like at home with an old blackface amp, you ain't really going to get it above 3. And the only way you're going to get it above 3 is if you attenuate it. So with a bit of experimenting, I kind of just started slamming the amp, getting it up on like 8, and then using the Zonk there. And that's where the Zonk lives. I think that's where you get the best out of the Zonk.
Oh, this is cool. This is top secret. Are you familiar with DanDrive?
Yeah.
So he builds a Zonk, sort of his take on a Zonk.
Secret machine, secret weapon, secret.
The secret machine, secret weapon. Can't remember. I when I bought this, I was like, okay, I really want to hear what this is all about, and I plugged into it and was like, okay, well this sucks. I mean, it doesn't suck. It just doesn't do what I wanted it to do. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, but which is not at all what I wanted it to do. So I said to Dan, I want to try and capture this sort of specialness about the Zonk, but make it a little easier to use and sort of retain some of that bottom end, and so that's kind of what this is. And I'll
so
play
that
it.
that isn't out in the public yet.
No, it's top secret. as he announces it on a YouTube channel. It probably next year. You can really get the fuzz down and the volume up on it. And then it kind of gets that cool Doyle thing. I feel like. I mean,
Yeah, stank face.
stank face. Yeah, totally. And it's only gonna have 2 knobs, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
I'm a big fan of the Tone Bender Mark II. With single coils, it's a incredible pedal. I love that. I've also been using the King Tone fuzz is excellent.
It's so fat. It's crazy. It's almost too fat, to be honest. But there's nothing wrong with that. So good.
You know what else is really good is R2R Electronics. They're doing a super fuzz that's incredible. Really, really good. They also do a treble booster. They're like the best treble boosters out.
Oh, I wanted to show one other thing, which is not actually a fuzz pedal, but do you know this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is his treble booster. I love this thing because I was never a treble booster guy, but this to me is like sounds like a fuzz without the fuzz. Like it's got the kind of quack in the nose. I think that's really fun. I really like that.
And then there is the whole debate, should you use battery power or DC power. I think they sound best with batteries, but sometimes I run them from the power supply because it's just easier, or I'm afraid the battery is gonna die or something. So if they have a DC socket or AC socket is DC socket. When I have a DC socket, I'll sometimes run them from the power supply, but I prefer to run them from battery. So let's check out the difference. This is a cool little thing made by the GigrRig in the UK, from the GigrRig switcher and the Quartermasters, and Dan from that pedal show, of course. Love you, Dan. This is a 9-volt virtual battery. Here you attach the power supply, and this goes this goes to the Fuzz pedal. And you can actually set the voltage with this tiny little pot here, and it mimics a battery, a fresh battery or a dying battery. And it actually works really well. So this is what this little thing sounds like with a Fuzz pedal.
Holding a tiger by the tail sort of thing, you know, you're just trying to hang on and control it a little bit. And I think, you know, humans are drawn to that. You know, we like dangerous things. But from the guitar world, yeah, it's just it's so rudimentary, you know, because you can make a fuzz circuit with one transistor, you know, that in a handful of parts that on paper you'd think there's no way this will sound good, and it just explodes out of your amp. And so yeah, a lot of people, you know, they say they like strats because you have to fight it to get something out of it. And I think fuzz pedals are often that way too. It's like there's a danger, you know, if you turn your guitar the wrong way, your amp might just turn into, you know, uncontrollable feedback or whatever. So it's a bigger thing that you have to be a part of, and you have to be cognizant of it whenever you are playing a fuzz. And I think that's what makes it so fun.
There's something special about it. Things were made better then, you know, better components, more care in the circuitry. And I'm not a builder in any way. I couldn't tell you anything about what goes on inside them. But yeah, I think that's where it is. I think that the tone is just, it's hard to beat.
As an engineer, and like, because science is real, there isn't magic. You know, I think I can explain things very simply. Like, a transistor has error, and error is musical. And it's like when I go into the grocery stores here in America, sometimes they play the MIDI version of like a top 40 hit. So it's like the melody, but it's like, and it's annoying because it's perfect. And when I listen to a band is never perfect. A symphony is never perfectly in tune, and nature's not perfect. So when I go on a bike ride and I'm outside and you hear the trees and the birds and the gravel under the tire of the bike, none of that's in tune. None of that is perfect, but that is perfect. And so scientifically, what's the deal? You know, why is there magic? No, I don't. I think that stuff helps us somehow, maybe cling on, like, to understand, you know, like, with this transistor, is it magical? Can you recreate it? I don't know. I just think it comes back again to the analog thing. There's an imperfection that is enjoyable as a human. A bunch of parallels, like, I'm in a rabbit hole of film photography, so I quit shooting digital and I shoot film. Film is ridiculous. You have a roll of tape basically with chemicals on it exposed to light, lay it in a bath and it reacts and there's a picture. Like, that's witchcraft, you know? Shooting film, I'll use it as a parallel to fuzz. Shooting film is difficult, but it's more satisfying. Playing fuzz is more difficult, but it's satisfying. Listening to imperfect nature is different than listening to MIDI, but it's more satisfying. It's not perfect. There's something about, like, the process. A process that's harder to do is more fulfilling. And I think I think historically, and like for me, I'll just speak for myself. When something's more difficult artistically, I like it more. I think art should be difficult. That's not to say I can't, you know, take a paintbrush and splatter it against the wall and sell it for $1 million. People have done that. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I think art is wasteful. It takes time to do. It's difficult. It's a process. And that in the process, it's not so much that I buy a painting and I have art. I think there's something about I bought a painting that cost somebody time and effort, and it was hard to do, and I own that moment of art. And I think there's something to the analog of guitar that fits that. Film photography, painting, they're all very wasteful. I can pull out my Sony camera and snap 1,000,000 shots, never have to, like, I can put it on auto. I can, like, take photo. Like, I went to Iceland and there was this joke. Iceland, everywhere you turn, looks like a freaking Disney movie. I could have literally taken my camera and just been like, and like closed my eyes and put it in, and like had an amazing shot. That's not difficult, you know. There's something about the film analog and then the transistor analog, the germanium fuzz analog, that using analog as a term of a thing. I think that art is wasteful and hard for it to be good. That's my opinion. And there's something interesting about that. And people are drawn to that. As much as our society loves McDonald's and microwaves, I think that we really do long for something that means something. So fuzz means something. It's not a button on a display screen. And some of that could be the story. The story means a lot to me. I'm gonna play a tone bender because I love the story. I'm not saying that the Line 6 fuzz isn't good. I actually like it, but I'm gonna play the tone bender because it has a story and it means something to me. And I think that is analog, you know. See, we're doing the philosophical rant now. I warned you. Yeah. I mean, it is very much philosophical.
Thank you for watching, and this is my cat. I want to thank everybody who was involved in this episode. You know who you are. Please subscribe to the channel, and extended interviews will be available on my Patreon page. Like the video, dislike the video, and I hope to see you next time.